So, you remember that article we talked about in the JT Miller Johnny Gaudreau video from yesterday? We made that entire premise off of the new article published on The Athletic by Rick Dhaliwal and Thomas Drance. Here it is again if you just want a little bit of a reminder what we're hearing about the JT Miller dynamic and the Canucks' plan for training camp. The link to this article will be in the description again if you want to go ahead and read it a second time. But what I wanted to talk about in this video was another type of conversation, pretty much, when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks and their offseason. Because even though you have yourselves articles on The Athletic, for example, that are giving the Vancouver Canucks offseason a C+ rating or whatever, and you have Canucks fans going out there saying that, yeah, the Canucks offseason wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad. You know? Sure, you could say that unloading one of Myers or unloading one of OEL was a pretty big priority. You could say that re-signing JT Miller or trading JT Miller was another priority. There are many unturned stones when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks and what Rutherford and Alvin need to do to set this team up for the future. But what I wanted to turn your attention to in this video was how things really could have been a lot worse if we were not careful. So, this is the post I wanted to talk about on the Canucks subreddit, Paywall Athletic article. The club is far from satisfied internally with where they stand going into this season. It's a post made by Glad to Be Alive, quoting the same Athletic piece that we just talked about. Let's go over what exactly it was that was discussed here on the subreddit. Glad to Be Alive included a link to the article which has a lot of good intel on it. The point I want to feature is that the quote below, which is that the management wants to make more changes, but has been unable to so far. It's going to take time. This is what's written about in the piece. In their first season in charge, the harsh realities of the flat cap made it prohibitive for the Canucks president of hockey operations Jim Rutherford and GM Patrick Alvin to shed salary, get younger, and upgrade their defense core, particularly on the right side, at the pace the club had hoped for. New management has inherited a roster that's not poor enough to rebuild, not good enough to contend, poorly positioned cap-wise, and built so that the majority of their non-essential cap commitments are tied up in assets that have turned out to be distressed in the new flat cap marketplace. Is it any wonder, with that in mind, that this offseason played out in such a pedestrian fashion? At least the club is far from satisfied, internally, with where they stand going into the season. Now, this small little piece of the article kind of just makes things a lot easier to stomach, I feel. Because yeah, I was one of the people that was saying, yeah, no, the Canucks offseason this year wasn't really, the best because of all the players they still have, like Myers and OEL and Miller, that's all unresolved. So, there definitely were more things I feel the team should have addressed instead of just leaving them to be. But then you think about it really, and it's okay, there is a difference between, leaving it to be, running out of time, Jim Benning style with Tyler Toffoli, and just not being able to get anything done. You know? If Tyler Myers was on the trade block the entire time, we had some rumors saying that he might actually go to Buffalo, saying that he could go to the Islanders, stuff like that, and so if there was a Tyler Myers trade on the horizon, they were thinking about moving him, they almost moved him, they were 99% of the way there to moving him in some parts of this year's offseason. If that's the case, then okay, that's great, but they still didn't get it done at the end of the day. And what's the difference between looking like you did nothing at all and doing something but not having the finishing capacity in that respect? Nothing. So, optics-wise, it might look like the Vancouver Canucks just had themselves a pretty lackluster offseason, but there are a lot of good things that I feel the team actually did address instead. This is what Comprehensive Car 9199 said in the comment section. I'd hope they are far from satisfied, as nothing has really gone their way to this point. Glad to Be Alive then replies and says this: I think they've done well, all things considered. They signed a UFA in Andrei Kuzmenko. They signed Curtis Lazar, whom they talked about in a pretty good way. They signed Ilya Mikheyev, who might be going out there, maybe getting 20 goals, who knows. Is he overpaid? We'll see. But at the moment, he is a contract signing that the Canucks actually like. Same with Dakota Joshua. They drafted Lekaramaki, whom they seem to be very high on, and they drafted another Elias Pettersson. The one major issue is JT, which hangs over everything. Nerd Punch also said this: I'm sure the front office wanted to hit some home runs, but they've hit a few singles without giving up any hits. Now, I really like the way they said that because it's like, yeah, the Vancouver Canucks could have done much worse this offseason. And Glad to Be Alive actually says that. We didn't trade away our first-round pick, we didn't trade away our second or our third, we didn't overpay for any old veterans, and we didn't lose any UFA players for nothing. It's been a nice change. Fishing is Life 70 then says, yeah, it's such a low bar that it's kind of sad, and I know. Oh, man, alright, let's just pat ourselves on the back here, give ourselves support as Canucks fans because it's been rough. 8 straight years of a Jim Benning regime where first-round picks, yeah, no, they come and go. You trade them away sometimes, you keep them other times. You trade away your seconds, you trade away your thirds, you overpay for old veterans like Roussel and Beagle and Eriksson, and you lose UFA players for nothing. You want to talk about Dan Hamhuis? Yeah, you want to talk about Dan Hamhuis. You want to talk about Radim Vrbata? Yeah, we're going to talk about Vrbata. You want to talk about the team not putting themselves in a position to lose out on UFAs for free? Hey, Tyler Mott traded him away to New York, got themselves a pretty low pick, but that's okay because any pick is better than nothing. And at least now you didn't have any Toffoli, Tanev, Markstrom situations presenting themselves here because, yeah, that's the more recent one, isn't it? The Hamhuis Vrbata one was from a long time ago comparative to those, so I just wanted to save some face there by bringing those up. But either way, the Vancouver Canucks are in a strange position because the diehard fans like you and me, the ones who are watching YouTube videos talking about this team, we're kind of like, okay, it could have been worse. It could have been worse because the bar is so gosh darn low. And I feel kind of bad for me, I feel bad for you that we have to deal with stuff like this. Here's Nincross. The fact that we make 3 separate points that we didn't trade away our first to third round picks shows how much Benning gave our fans PTSD. Ebomega says, last draft we missed the playoffs and we had 1 pick in the first 4 rounds, including missing out on the top 10 pick. How Benning didn't get fired then and there still baffles me, but in my opinion, he should have been dropped after the 2020 Toffoli, Tanev, Markstrom fiasco. So, at the end of the day, even though the Vancouver Canucks are kind of coming off an offseason where they didn't really do as much as they probably would have wanted to, at the very least they didn't make any moves that are setting them backwards. And at the very least we're hearing from the NHL insiders that, yeah, no, the team is unsatisfied. They don't like what they were able to not do. Like, they're unhappy with what they weren't able to accomplish. I mean, I love the sentence here. Let's just reread it here. New management has inherited a roster that is not poor enough to rebuild, not good enough to contend, poorly positioned cap-wise, and built so that the majority of their non-essential cap commitments are tied up into assets that have turned out to be distressed in the new flat cap marketplace. Man, this is not the same team that went into the 2020 bubble. You don't have right-side depth in your defense like Troy Stecher. You don't have an absolutely beautiful tandem of Markstrom and Demko. You don't have Tyler Toffoli. You don't have Chris Tanev. This right side has gotten so much worse. The forward depth, you could say it's a little bit better because Pettersson's supposed to be better and Brock's supposed to be better. Bo's supposed to be better because they're older, but like, yeah, I don't know. The depth throughout the lineup, like, heck, Beagle and Sutter and Tyler Mott were all really good in the bubble run, oddly enough, so I will go out there and actually pat those guys on the back. But this bottom 6 right now, we're going to have to see what Curtis Lazar is going to be able to do. We're going to have to see what other players are going to do in that role. And I say other players because, like, think about it. Elias Pettersson, Besser, Miller. You have Podkolzin, Höglander, Kuzmenko, Horvat, Garland, Dickinson. Like, that's like 9 players right there. Mikheyev, Pearson, Lazar, like, that's a full team. So there's going to be a body or two on the bottom 6 that probably should not be there when it comes to the caliber of talent that they are. We're just really going to have to wait and see what happens when we have the Lotto line and maybe Bo and Kuzmenko and, like, another winger on the top 6 and everybody else is in the bottom 6. But either way, the Canucks offseason, especially on the right side of the defense, not the best, but at the end of the day, they did not make any moves to set themselves backwards because we had seen a lot of these backwards-setting moves every single offseason by Jim Benning. Either that means letting a guy like Toffoli or Tanev or Markstrom go, making a big trade to sacrifice 1 year's worth of salary commitment to Eriksson, Beagle, and Roussel in exchange for an extraordinarily long contract in OEL, like, and then there's the idea of trading away our draft picks, which the Canucks had done a lot in the past too. At the very least, we're okay. It could have been worse. Could have been way, way worse. Talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about the Vancouver Canucks and their offseason so far, I guess. Are you satisfied? Unsatisfied? The Athletic gave him a C+ rating or whatever the heck it was, and I kind of agree with that assessment. It's just, you gotta feel for them a little bit. They were handcuffed. Talk to the comments, your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.